Okay, so I'm going to run through everything in Genesis. The first place we're going to start is Genesis 1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness over the face of the deep. So, again, this is the whole story of creation, creation of the world, right, as we know it. So, one of the things we understand is that things were just different when the earth was directly under the control of Adam and Eve. When Adam sinned, that meant that his control over the earth was forfeited over to Satan. That is what that means. That is why it's so significant. So, going further than that, just getting over the basics. God instituted sun, he instituted the moon. Everything that we see before our eyes that hasn't been made by us was made by God. So, what that means is the sun, the moon, the atmosphere, the galaxy, the universe around us, that was all made by God. So, you also see God doing things like letting there be an expanse between the midst of the waters and let it separate the waters from the waters. So, this is, I mean, for one, this is the heavens. For one, you see it being defined here as being the heavens. So he made the space between the sky and the water, and then borders of waters, and many other things. Like, for example, he made every tree produce the fruit that it's going to produce. So apple trees, lemon trees, that stuff. Another thing that God did was he made stars. And it's clear these stars and signs are meant for us to determine what season it is. So seasons are man made, but again, God made them there so that we could do that in the first place. The reason why we're able to tell what season it is because God put the sun, the stars, and the moon, not for us to communicate to them and try to get readings from them, but for us to tell the time. And that's what we use them for. Now, of course, people do that and go further and praise them as gods, but that's not what they are. So, moving forward, ultimately, what you get from this is that there is a sense of order in how everything works, how the birds fly, how they feed, how the animals in the ocean are able to swim around and populate, how everything's able to populate, how everything works. God designed that all. And it takes a supernatural design, a supernatural being like God to do all this stuff because this isn't stuff that happens by chance. This is stuff that is illustrated and orchestrated and it happens consistently. You don't ever see trees grow upside down. You don't ever see trees grow left side up or right side up. I guess you would see them go right side up, but you get what I'm saying. Again, things have order to them. Like, for example, there's never a day where you've seen a tree grow upside down unless there's been some kind of influence, most likely human, on that tree. Things just work the way they do because God instills. As a matter of fact, we understand the fact that the reason the earth, the universe, everything still works is because God wills it to. As soon as God wills it to, he could stop everything from working. It would break apart. It's the same way that when you're playing a game and you're holding an ability key that has a move that continuously works until you let go of it, that's how God is. Everything works because he wills it to, right? Anyway, moving on. This is Genesis 1. Getting to Genesis 2, we're going to talk here about the seventh day where God rests. God did not actually need to rest. That is a misconception I'm sure a lot of people have. It was to represent the fact that he eventually wanted us to rest and mimic him. Again, part of us being made in his image means that we inherit things from him. So that means that we rest. That means we think. That means we're creative. That means we're able to show love. Again, I think one of the greatest gifts that God has allowed human beings, even though they don't deserve it a bit, is the fact that even though we turn away from him every single day and we get farther away from him as society proceeds and progresses, he still allows us to feel things like love, emotions, happiness, joy, sleep, rest, the ability to taste stuff. Those are all like the ability to experience things. Those are all gifts from God that we don't need at all. Those are things he just intended for us to have because he wanted us to enjoy our time here. The creation of man and woman. So the creation of man and woman is very simple. Adam was made, and then he was made from dust. Eve was made after him from his rib. This was done because God put him in a anesthesic sleep, you could call it, and he removed a rib from him, and that is how Eve was made. Adam was made to lead Eve, not rule over her as some kind of king, but to lead her. So what that means is that whenever there's a decision to be made, Adam should be making that decision. That's not something that Eve should be doing. One of the problems that Adam faced is that he listened to Eve when he knew very well what she was doing. People misconceptionize the fact that Adam was not near Eve when this was happening. When Eve and Adam were at the tree, when Eve was at the tree, Adam was right there behind her. And this is God at the very beginning of Genesis 2, or at the very end, I should say. Genesis 2, verse 24. Therefore, a man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. And the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. This entire verse is pointing to the fact, these entire two verses are pointing to the fact that man was meant to be with woman. That no other way about that. God did not say a partner shall leave his parents. It's specified again. It specified mother and father. So it's specifying a whole chain that starts off with the mother and father Not a spouse and a spouse, not a man and a man, a woman and a woman. This is very straightforward and clear. I sound annoyed right now, but it's just I'm tired. But moving on, this is very straightforward. A man shall leave his father and his mother and hold fast to his wife. I don't know why my light is acting up at all, but it is. Anyway, they shall become one flesh, and the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. So, again, God never intended for it to be another way. Marriage is something that is only meant to be between a man and a woman. Every time someone commits marriage or commits sex outside of marriage, they are sinning directly against God and their own bodies, because that's not what their bodies were made for. And it's very clear. You don't need to be a genius. You don't even need to be religious to understand the fact that men aren't supposed to be with men and women aren't supposed to be women. It's again, it's a fundamental understanding. That's simply something humans do because they want to do it. Like it doesn't take a genius at all to recognize the fact that a man shouldn't be penetrating a man or that a woman shouldn't be eloping with another woman. Like that's not, again, that's something humans do simply because we have free will and we choose to pleasure ourselves how we will. Which again, that's one of the gifts of God. We have free will. Now we abuse that gift all the time, all the time. That's one of the ways we abuse it. Moving on to Genesis 2 and 3 and on. So, um, Now, Adam and Eve were tempted, something people misconceptualize a lot as well. They think that, oh, God's so unfair for letting them be tempted. God is completely fair for letting them understand the possibility of a way outside of God's way. He's completely fair for that because, again, people always get upset when a child is closeted away and is not able to hear out someone else's opinion. God allowed Adam and Eve to hear the serpent's opinion, and he allowed them to make their choice. So, is this a wrong thing of God? No, it's absolutely not. God gave Adam and Eve perfection, and Adam and Eve had perfection in front of them. They chose to leave perfection because some literal serpent walked up to them and said, yeah, whatever God told you is kind of BS. I'm not going to lie to you. He lied to you. Eat this fruit and you'll be good. Again, if your parents told you not to do something and then some random person who looked very, very just devious came up to you and told you to otherwise and you listened to them, that'd be completely your fault. Adam and Eve weren't stupid. Adam was probably the second most intelligent human being to ever exist. I say second because Solomon existed. But anyway, they weren't idiots. Adam knew exactly what he was doing. Again, Adam was right next to Eve while this happened. That's what makes it 100 times worse. Imagine seeing your wife getting scammed and you're sitting there watching her getting scammed, and then after she gets scammed, you let her scam you. Again, at the end of the day, it's very clear and obvious that Adam and Eve wanted to make that choice because they wanted to see what being God felt like, and they figured that out really quickly. And this is entirely shown here. Yes, yeah, very clear. And 8. And she also gave some to her husband who was with her. So again, while this whole situation was going down, he was right there. He should not have done that at all. There were plenty of times in the Bible where you will see women leading men and it goes terribly. That is not to say women cannot lead. What the point of those verses and those stories are is to show you that men are supposed to be leading women first. It's what God made us for. That is the whole point. Now, does that mean women have any less value inherently? No, absolutely not. Men have just as much value as women have, and vice versa. It's just the fact that that's what God intended for. And again, nothing God does is for the bad of man. Whenever you pay attention to what God is doing, it's never for the harm of man. Jesus didn't die so we could all die. He died so we could all live. But moving on. They have eaten the fruit of knowledge of good and evil. So what that means is that they will now from now on be able to make their own choices, which they were able to do already. But what I should be saying, the correct terminology is they understand the consequences of their choices now. So they understand what good is and they understand what bad is. But at the end of the day, because they have free will, they'll often choose to do wrong now because they understand that doing good isn't always super cool at the time. It's not always beneficial to me at the time. It's when I do stuff for me, that's beneficial. And that's often what sin is. It's all about me, not about God. And why is it all got to be all about God? Because God is all good. What that means is that the same way you praise a dog for doing a good thing, like sitting down when you tell him to, God is all good. So you should do everything in your power to praise him. All good things come from God. That's a verse you're going to see later on in the Bible. But anyway, because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and above all beasts of the field. This is God cursing the serpent. So we're gonna get a move on here. But long story short story, God makes a prophecy, and I shouldn't say makes a prophecy, he makes a prediction, but I guess it's both. He says, the man called his wife's name Eve, or wait, sorry, a little bit lower. Then the Lord God said, behold, the man has become like one of us in knowing good and evil. Now lest he reach out his hand and take also the tree of life and eat and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him out from the Garden of Eden to work the ground from which he was taken. He drove out the man in the east, and at the east of the Garden of Eden placed the cherubim and a flaming sword that turned every way to guard the tree of life. So again, God made a prophecy, and this prophecy will probably be up here. Yes, it is. So This is what he says to the serpent, who was Satan. We understand that to be Satan. Because you have done this, cursed are you above all livestock and above all beasts of the field. On your belly you shall go, and dust you shall eat all the days of your life. I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring, um, between your offspring and her offspring. He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. To the woman he said, I will surely multiply your pain in childbearing. In pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be contrary to your husband, but he shall rule over you. And to Adam he said, because you have listened to the voice of your wife and have eaten of the tree of which I commanded you, you shall not eat of it. Cursed is the ground because of you. In pain you shall eat of it all the days of your life. Thorns and thistles it shall bring forth for you. And you shall eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it you were taken, for you are dust, and to dust you shall return. Again, very unfortunate, especially because, again, this is representative of the fact that humans will have a perfect option in front of them, that being God, and they will still choose evil. They will still choose the thing that is actually harmful to them, knowing that. Again, Adam and Eve understood that God was all good at the time. They understood that, but they saw someone else offering them something else, and they still chose to follow him instead of God. That is entirely their fault. Oh, well, why did we get punished? Okay, what people miss is that that's not exactly, it's again, the whole point of the story is to show the fact that humans will have something perfect for them, and they'll still choose the evil way to do it. Something will be set out already for them. You already have a path laid out from God, specifically in this specific case, and you'll still choose to do evil. So yes, we inherited sin nature, but at the end of the day, what it means is this: we have free will to choose good and evil. And guess what? It is in our human nature to just do evil. Humans can 100% say no to evil. It is 100% an option. Now, do we do that? No, we absolutely do not. So if you want to sit here and talk about how, well, why am I condemned for it? Because you sin. Well, I inherited this in nature. Okay, yeah, you inherited this in nature because they were the first of humans. But even beyond that, tell me, like, do you ever just tell yourself no sometimes? Or do you just follow your instinct and do stuff? Like, seriously, think about that for like 5 seconds. Again, part of that nature means that we have the understanding of what good and wrong is. God inherently planted that in our hearts, in our minds, in our souls, maybe, right? So, long story short, it's not a situation of, oh, I'm being punished for something I didn't do. Okay, when you're born into this world, you are bound to sin. That's just how that works. Sin entered the world and man. So the reason why the world sucks now is because there's sin within it. Animals did not used to be aggressive. Like, that wasn't a thing. Animals used to live in harmony the same way humans live in harmony with animals. Like, lions did not used to kill lambs. That wasn't a thing. That's something that only happened after sin entered the world. Because sin entering the world, that was us telling that, again, that's a direct message from us to God. We do not want to live in a world where you are present. We want to do our own thing and become our own gods. Going back to Genesis 3, one of the things Satan tells them is that you will be like God. That is him saying that they will be their own gods. So, control find. You will not surely die, for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil. So, again, we understand good and evil, but the problem is we always, almost always choose evil. And the only time we ever choose good is when it's convenient for us or when God is behind us, leading us, inspiring us to do so. So, anyway, Cain and Abel, the first ever murder, the first ever killing of a human being. This was because Cain simply just didn't like the fact that God appreciated his offerings more than his brother, his offerings more than his brother's offerings more than him. That's simply why. The first ever murder didn't happen because there was a global war and we wanted to settle it. No, it happened because an older brother was upset that his younger brother's offering was more pleasing to him, to God, than his. Mind you, his brother was offering lambs as sacrifices and he was offering vegetables as sacrifices. You can imagine why that wouldn't be. Oh, well, God didn't help. Okay, one of the things God told him is that sin is waiting at your door. God warned him of the fact that he needs to control his emotions and not let his pride, his jealousy get to him because it would cause him to sin. And you'll see this right here. And if you do not if you do not do well, sin is crouching at the door. So, a lot of people ask, okay, what could Cain have done differently? What could he have done differently? Okay, there were a lot of things he could have done differently. For one, he could have actually offered like a living animal as a sacrifice to God, which was the whole point of that. He's offering vegetables while his brother's like, again, it's the equivalent of giving someone $20 and then another person gives you a rock. There's clearly going to be more favor in the $20 than a rock. I can't do anything with a rock. As much as it might be value to you, that's not of value to me. Um, but anyway, Its desire is contrary to you, but you must rule over it. Cain spoke to his brother Abel, and when they were in the field, Cain rose up against his brother Abel and killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, "Where is Abel, your brother?" He said, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" And the Lord said, "What have you done? The voice of your brother's blood is crying to me from the ground. And now you are cursed from the ground, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood from your hand." Anyway, long story, this is the first of a murder. The first thing Cain says, instead of apologizing, instead of repenting of what he's doing, "Oh no, this is what you're doing is too great. I can't handle this. You've cursed me so that everyone on the earth will try to kill me if they see me. Like I can't deal with this," which is completely deserved because he's the first ever person to murder somebody. Um, but I'll read it too. Cain said to the Lord, and notice the first thing Cain said wasn't how sorry he was. It was Cain said to the Lord, "My punishment is greater than I can bear. Behold, you have driven me today away from the ground, and from your face I shall be hidden. I shall be a fugitive and a wanderer on the earth, and whoever finds me will kill me." Then the Lord said to him, "Not so. If anyone kills Cain, vengeance shall be taken on him sevenfold." So even though he didn't need to at all, and he shouldn't have, which I won't say he shouldn't have, I'm not God. I'm not going to say what God should and shouldn't have done, but I wouldn't have done that. I 100% wouldn't have done that. He deserved what was happening to him, or what could have happened to him. He protected him. So anyway, we get to Adam's descendants to Noah. This is basically a lineage line. This is the word you're going to find for this is I can't remember the word. Genealogy. This is a genealogy. So basically, it tells how long people lived, who their sons and daughters were, and so on and so forth. Really, it's the sons. They don't include daughters simply because at this time period, they didn't see daughters of as much significance because obviously the man was who um, initiated a lot of things. Now, this is unfortunate, but again, this is just how the time was. So part of the things the Bible, a big part of the Bible is this. You're going to notice the fact that it matches up with the time period it's in. Now, is that to say everything's right? Absolutely freaking not. No. What it's saying is that there was a specific way that things were written at this time. God still inspired man to make the Bible, but at the same time, he gave them the free will to say what they did say. But at the same time, he inspired them to be truthful. So, for example, in the Bible, when it says that David murdered the man so he could sleep with his wife, that's not God justifying it. That's God saying, yeah, what he did was wrong, and you don't need to do what he did. You need to learn from what he did and not do what he did. But anyway, learn from this and don't do what they did. Include everybody in your genealogy. Or just include who you want. Again, I don't think the genealogies were made in a way that was meant to. I don't think they were inherently making the genealogies and were trying to be sexist. I just think that at the time, they just kept mark of the men. But there's also genealogies in the Bible that keep mark of the women as well, right? So yeah, and it mentions the sons and daughters, but again, it also mentions the sons. But this is trivial, honestly. Again, it doesn't really matter. This is a lineage, right? You'll see things like people living 840 years, and the reason why people were living so long back then is because the ozone layer was different. What we understand now, the ozone layer keeps us from getting past certain ages. Like the life expectancy of people is significantly lower than it was thousands of years ago. So, long story short story, the earth was different at this time. And one of the reasons we know the earth was different at this time is because if we go back all the way to Genesis 1, it talks about the fact that there is a veil over the earth. And this veil is what we understand to be, sorry, this is Genesis 2 probably. Um, Mist. It's going to be a misty veil. Yes, okay. So, um, and the mist was going out from the land and it was watering the whole face of the ground. So this is basically what we would have understood to be a prehistoric, I guess, ozone layer. And again, this mist is what watered the ground. So again, there was no rain at the time. Like before Noah's time, there had never been rain on the earth. This misty veil over the earth that was protecting us and also watering the crops of the earth existed. Now, after the flood, things changed. Things changed drastically, right? But again, remember, there was a misty veil over the earth before the flood. So there had never been rain before, ever, before Noah's time. Getting back to it, increasing corruption on the earth. At this time, there were a lot of things going on in the earth. There were a lot of theories here, but I'm going to keep it very short. People were evil. There were giants on the earth at this time, like literal giants, like 10 feet tall, 20 feet tall, about those sizes. And they were known as the Nephilim. So I think it even mentions the exact word Nephilim. Yes, it does. The Nephilim were on the earth in those days, and also afterward were the sons of God came into the daughters of man, and they bore children. So angels came from heaven and had intercourse with women, and they bore hybrids. Now, when these hybrids die, they don't have the same gift of God's grace as we do because they are born. Again, I'll put it this way. If evil is inherently a part of your birth, which I don't know why, but someone's calling me right now. Anyway, let me put it this way. And the easiest way to put this and why the Nephilim are not redeemable as humans are is because they're not human. They're they're literally of divine nature, and not in the sense that they're good, but they're of divine nature. They are of angels, and angels having intercourse with women, that was wrong. That was 100% wrong, and not at all what God intended to do. Can they still do that now? No. God has literally said that you cannot do that. There was a point in the Bible where God says that they will no longer be able to do that. And that is why you not like Nephilim obviously existed though. But let me just explain it this way. So man began to multiply on the face of the earth. The Nephilim came. These are the Nephilim and the offspring of angels with women. And what this does is that it allows them to do crazy things. So for example, they would be bigger. Like it's theorized that a lot of the reasons why we see these weird false gods in other religions is because of the fact that Nephilim existed. So those elephants you're seeing that have 6 arms, it's a possibility that thing could have existed. That's very possible. And that's because if you are of angel descent, you can do things that humans cannot commonly do. So what you could possibly do is change how you look, because angels can change however they can appear how they want to appear. Another theory is that after the Nephilim died in the flood, a theory is that their spirits aren't like human spirits. So their spirits don't go to heaven or hell, at least not yet. Their spirits are stuck on earth and they roam around and try to possess people and try to generally harm people. They are known as demons. That is what people, that's one of the theories. The other theory is that angels are just demons. But at the same time, that wouldn't make as much sense personally, in my opinion. I'll keep this short again. Nephilim, they died. Either Nephilim lived and they had powers, or they died and they had powers after because they were no longer shaken by their human flesh. But beyond that, their souls are not the same as our souls. So that is why they are not justified in the same way we're justified for redemption. So what that means is that they were inherently evil. There was no redemption for them. And that's because how they were born. Oh, that's not fair. It's 100% fair. The angel shouldn't have been doing it and the woman shouldn't have been doing it. Oh, well, how did the woman know the angels? Okay, you're going to freaking know if your husband's an angel. There's going to be something off about your husband that makes you think, you know what? My husband has like a glow to him or something, which I'm not saying he really has a glow, but at the end of the day, it's going to be very hard to fool a woman. It's hard for men nowadays to fool their wives. Like, jokes aside, it's hard for them to fool them now. So I highly doubt an angel would have been able to fool a woman and be thinking that he was 100% human and there was nothing wrong with him. So again, the women are taking some of that blame too, but it's really the angel's fault as well. That is why they were eliminated as part of the flood and why they were cast out from heaven. These weren't angels that were still in heaven. These were angels that were cast out in heaven, right? Because of this. Anyway, long story short story. The angels, offspring of the Nephilim, were killed off. There were still some Nephilim around later on in the Bible. It explains that part too. But at that point, that is when God stopped allowing angels to produce women and make super offspring. That's what we're gonna call them, or Nephilim. But you can look up the Nephilim and do your own research. They are what we understand to be giants, and they were evil. Like they would, like it's very possible that they would eat people. No Attack on Titan. It's very possible they would eat people. Again, this was a wicked time. That's why God inherently sent the flood. It wasn't because people were just on Snapchat being aggressive and cyberbullying. It's because people were doing wicked things this time. One of the wicked things is that they were having sex with angels, and angels having sex with them. And then, of course, a lot of other crazy things were going on at this time, right? This is what the Lord describes it as. The Lord saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth, and that every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually. So that means every thought at that time, save Noah, because Noah was one of the few people, and I really say since a few, one of the only people who feared God. And this part is something that resonates with a lot of people. But also people misinterpret this. And the Lord regretted that he made man on the earth, and it grieved him to his heart. So there are a lot of different ways people interpret this. I will tell you this. The best way to interpret this is this. Understand that the Lord regretted that he made man on earth. That is what it's saying. But if you go to a different translation, it won't use the word regret. It'll say it grieved him that he made us on earth. But at the end of the day, God doesn't experience regret or doesn't experience emotions the same way we do. So for example, God doesn't regret his decision because he's not human. Everything he does is intentional. So did God, again, understand the Bible is written from the perspective of people. Even though it is God-inspired word, it is still written from the perspective of people. So not everything is going to be exactly as it is. Now, there are obviously situations where it's 100% true. Like, for example, when Jesus says that he is man, that he is God and man at the same time, that is 100%. There's no other way to interpret that. He is saying that he is God and man. But when it's saying things like, God says that he regretted making man, it's clear God did not regret making us because he wouldn't have even continued the effort of trying to save us if he did regret making us. Anyway, Noah had gotten 2, or actually it's more than just 2 of each animal. For some it was 4, for some it was like 2, for some it was 6, I believe. But I'll let you read that. Again, this is amazing because we also get to see that fact that God understands science because he made it. Like he gave Noah the measurements to build the ark. So God made science. Science does not like disprove God. Science actually proves God, and that's why a lot of atheists who study the Bible end up believing, or at least acknowledging the fact that what it's saying is very it's reliable to an extent. Obviously, a lot of it takes faith, but a big majority of like historical events in the Bible are reliable. Anyway, God establishes a covenant with Noah, and he tells him everyone else on this earth will die, including the animals, because they are all wicked beyond like conceivable thought. Every thought they have is wicked. Plus, they're getting corrupted by the Nephilim around them, right? And they're not making an effort to be better. They understand they're being wicked and they want to do this. This isn't them being traumatized and they're confused on how to be. No, they know what they're doing is wicked and they're evil. They understand that. That's why he's getting rid of them. And he's going to start the whole entire earth over with Noah. So everyone on this earth that is currently alive and has been alive since Noah is a descendant of Noah. Um, that is how that works because we all descended from Noah's family tree because he was the only person alive left after the flood. So, God for 40 days and 40 nights flooded the earth. That is why if you study the earth, you will notice that the earth looks like it's been flooded. Crazy, I know. It's almost like the Bible could have some meat behind it. Crazy, I know. Anyway, getting back to it. Yeah, because we're like 26 minutes in. I want to make this an hour or maybe an hour 30, not too long. Anyway, then the Lord said to Noah, go into the ark, you and your household, for I have seen that you are righteous before me in this generation. Now, righteous, pay attention to this. When God says they're righteous, it's not because of the works they do, but it's because of the faith they have. Noah was just like any other man. Matter of fact, you'll notice that Noah gets drunk later on because he was too busy trying to pleasure himself, and one of his sons walks in and potentially molests him or sexually assaults their father. And it doesn't say that, but here's the thing: you need to pay attention when you read the Bible. Like seriously, like this is a you need to pay attention. And I say this because you're gonna say, well, where do you get that idea that he molested his father? I thought these were righteous people. No, Noah was righteous, but because God wanted to work with Noah, he allowed his children and his family to be there, even though the daughters, one of the sons didn't marry a favorable daughter. She did not fear God, which showed consequences later on. But again, God is willing to work through us even when we're not doing exactly what he tells us to do, which is very often. Anyway, moving on to Genesis 8, the flood subsides. Let's just do control find, drunk. Um, so after that, the rainbow was made. The rainbow was made to show the fact, and let me actually look it up. Let me see. Flood. Yeah, the flood subsides. Noah built an altar to the Lord and took some of every clean animal and some of every clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And when the Lord smelled the pleasing aroma, the Lord said to his heart, I will never again curse the ground because of man, for the intention of man's heart is evil from his youth. Neither will I ever again strike down every living creature as I have done. While the earth remains seed time and harvest, and cold, heat, summer and winter, day and night shall not cease. And God blessed Noah and his sons, and he said, be fruitful, because again, they were going to repopulate the earth. People will bring up the fact that they would have had to practice incest. That's true. And the reason why God allowed this at this time is because their gene pool was cleaner. Now, there was a certain point in the Bible where God said to stop practicing incest because it's no longer for survival. It's no longer needed. You don't need to do it to survive anymore. You will not any longer practice close intimate relations with your family because there are enough people on this earth that the gene pool is spread out enough that you do not need to be practicing incest anymore. And again, this is a survival thing. So that is why God allowed it. He did not allow it forever. Like any incest nowadays is not necessary at all. That again, God works through man, even though again he doesn't need to. Like none of the stuff he does for us is deserved at all. Um, so yeah, and your lifeblood is will require a reckoning. For every beast I will require, and from man. And again, I want to make very clear the gene pool was cleaner back then. Um, So that is the reason why he allowed that. And he only allowed it for a certain amount of time. There was literally a point where he says, you need to stop doing this because if you do this, there will be consequences. And those consequences, as we understand today, are the fact that you can mess up your kids if you were trying to breed within your direct family. Anyway, um, this is, what is this? This is Genesis 9. I'm trying to find the specific part where we get the rainbow. Um, but you know what? Yeah, we'll get here. Anyway, so Then God said to Noah and his sons with him, Behold, I establish my covenant with you and your offspring after you, and with every living creature that is with you, the birds, the livestock, and every beast of the earth, with you as many as came out of the ark. It is for every beast of the earth. I establish my covenant with you that never again all flesh be cut off by the waters of the flood. Never again shall there be a flood to destroy the earth. And God said, This is the sign of the covenant that I make between you and every living creature that is with you for all your future generations. I have set my bow in the cloud, and it shall be a sign of covenant between me and the earth. Realize Noah was preaching a crazy message when he was trying to, tell people about the flood coming. Right? Noah did not need to tell those people about the flood. They were evil and wicked, but he still wanted to do it anyway. Right? The reason why they called him crazy is because, again, the earth had never experienced rain at that time. That never happened. So for him to say it was going to rain, and not just rain, the earth was going to be flooded by water, that was new. Noah's descendants, Noah's sons from the ark, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Ham was the father of Canaan. These were the three sons of Noah, and from these people the whole earth was dispersed. Noah began to be a man of soil, and he planted a vineyard. He drank of the wine and became drunk, and land covered his tent. Now, unfortunately, his son decided to molest him. I have no idea what possessed his son to do this, but this is the son that he cursed because of what he did. So, Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. Then Shem and Japheth took a garment, laid it both on their shoulders, and walked backward and covered the nakedness of their father. So, again, you're already getting a weird vibe here because he saw the nakedness of his father. Okay, cool. Why is he reporting that? Right? You have to look at the context clues here. He drank of the wine and became drunk. Right? Noah's drunk. He's out cold. He's not in it right now. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. So you have to question, why didn't he just cover his own father up? Why did he have his brothers like, that's weird? And then even further than that, Noah, if he did nothing to Noah at all, if he simply just saw him naked, because no father's going to freak out because their son saw them naked. That's not, dang, man, that's just really embarrassing. No. He cursed him because what he did, whatever he did in that tent, was not okay at all. When Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his youngest son had done to him, he said, Cursed be Canaan. So again, something was done to him in that tent that Canaan did. So it's very much implied that he must have molested his father or done something else worse, which I can't imagine was worse. Blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. May God enlarge Japheth and let him dwell in the tent of Shem, and let Canaan be his servant. So what he did was wrong entirely. Anyway, after the flood, Noah lived 350 years. All the days of Noah were 950 years, and then he died. So after you read this is another genealogy. You'll notice people's lifespans are getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, eventually to where people really only live up to about 120 years or so, right? The Tower of Babel, my absolute favorite, and I don't want to say story because it's happened. This is my favorite part of the Bible. This is where we got languages from, at least a lot of them now today, right? People migrated from all over the world, and they found a plane, and what they did from there was they tried to build a temple, a giant what's the word I'm trying to look for? A giant tower to the heavens. They wanted to get to heaven on their own early. Now, this is what's very important. God has gifted us in such a way that we are just like him in the fact that when we set our minds to something, it can happen, right? So then they said, Come, and this is verse 4. We'll read from verse 4. Then they said, Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, and let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be dispersed over the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower. So again, like, this is one of those illustrations where it's just man's understanding of what's happening. It's not direct. Like, God didn't come down in human. No, like, God is omnipotent. He's everywhere at every time. This is just Moses, who wrote this book, understanding what's happening. So again, you have to have discernment when you're reading and understand that some things are literal and some things are not entirely literal. God was watching what they were doing, but it's not like he had to come down and like open up the clouds and take a peek at what was happening. He saw what was happening. And the Lord said this. He said, Behold, they are one people and they all have one language. And this is only the beginning of what they will do. And nothing that they propose to do will now be impossible for them because they were all able to converse and understand each other in intelligent dialogue. So, come, let us go down there and confuse our language so that they may not understand one another's speech. The Lord dispersed them from there over the face of all the earth, and they left off building a city. Therefore, the name was called Babel, because then the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord dispersed them over the face of the earth. So again, what God did there was completely just, because again, he made the fact that what they're trying to do is eventually going to work. I don't know how, I don't know when, I don't even know when, really, again, but God's saying that what they were doing, they were going to eventually succeed in doing whatever they're trying to do. Which the idea is that since they were building straight to the heavens, they were trying to become gods. They were trying to get to heaven early. Or something else. But again, whatever they were going to do, it was going to succeed. So Shem's descendants, again, another genealogy. You're seeing a lot of lifespans. You went from 900 to 800 to 500 to 400 to 209 to 207 to 200 to 70 to 70, right? People are decreasing in the amount of age. Now, the oldest person you're ever going to see in the Bible is Methuselah, who was about 960 something years old, 970 or something like that. That was the oldest character in the Bible that was the oldest person to ever exist. Now, the call of Abram, I skipped the genealogy, but understand Abram existed. That's where he existed from the genealogy. If you want to go back and read that, you can. Anyway, the Lord said to Abram, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father." Now, I want to point out, people deride Father Abraham so much. And again, it's important that Father Abraham existed. He was a start to a very big process of the redemption of humans. But God worked through him. It's not anything Abraham did that made him super special. God decided to work through him. You will find, if you read the Bible, that God chooses people who are unqualified and unfit, but still works through them. Abram almost let his wife become a concubine because he was afraid he'd be killed. That's not something you would think of as righteous, right? Anyway, moving on. The call of Abram. Abram is told by God, after I believe he would have been in his 40s or something like that. Or no, he was 75. But he departed from the land he was in, and he took his wife Sarai. And he also took his brother's son Lot. Yeah, his brother's son Lot. So his nephew. Yes. And they gathered all the possessions they had, and they moved to the land of Canaan. This is him trying to, again, make do on that covenant. This is God trying to make do on the covenant he promised Noah, and he's now working through Abraham to do so. Now, long story short, Abram and his nephew Lot are walking through the land, and they're trying to find a place to settle and make more family, more people, like to grow people and to grow community. There are other people on the earth at this point. Again, if you pay attention to the genealogies, you'll understand how people spread out and dispersed, especially because of Tower of Babel again. So they're not the only people on the earth. There's a lot of people on the earth at this point. Anyway, the Lord appeared to Abraham and said, "To you, your offspring, I will give this land." So he built there an altar to the Lord who had appeared to him. From there he moved to the hill country on the east of Bethel and pitched his tent with Bethel on the west and Ai on the east. And there he built an altar to the Lord and called upon the name of the Lord. And Abram journeyed on, still going to Negeb. So again, this is one of the perfect verses that you need to read, or the perfect, I should say, series of verses, because this is showing the fact that Abram was human and he made mistakes. Now, the reason why he did these mistakes is because he was afraid. At the end of the day, you don't need to read everything in the Bible and say, "Oh, God's condoning that because it's in the Bible." Like, for example, you wouldn't read a history book and say, "Oh, it's in history, so it's condoned." No, you're reading a history book to learn what we did and to improve from what we did, especially if it was a bad thing. Like, for example, slavery, right? So, Abram and Sarai. Now, there was a famine in the land, so Abram went down to Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was severe in the land. When he was about to enter Egypt, he said to Sarai, his wife, "I know that you are a beautiful woman in appearance, and when the Egyptians see you, they will say, 'This is his wife.' Then they will kill me, but they will let you live." So what he is implying is they're going to make her a concubine. They're going to make her. They're going to put her in a harem, right? When Abraham entered Egypt, the Egyptians saw the woman was very beautiful, and when the princes of Pharaoh saw her, they praised her to Pharaoh, and the woman was taken to Pharaoh's house, and for her sake he dealt with Abraham. What that means is that he gave him stuff. He gave him sheep. He gave him oxen, male donkeys, male servants, and female servants. You might see translations where this says slave, but at the end of the day, he gave them slaves or servants, however you want to phrase that. I'm going to talk about, actually, I'm not going to talk about slavery. I have 3 videos on my YouTube channel where I talk about slavery. You can go watch those. I've explained to you the Bible and how it deals with slavery and how it doesn't condone it, it regulates it. The same way in America, we condone, or I shouldn't say condone, but by some people's definition, we condone prostitution through Pornhub and OnlyFans and a bunch of other stuff, right? We don't condone it, we just regulate it so that people are safer. But at the end of the day, when you watch Pornhub and you subscribe to people, you're paying them money so that you can see sexual favors. Same with OnlyFans, except you're paying most of those situations. But anyway, again, America also regulates, doesn't condone, but it regulates gambling. And we don't condone it because we have hotlines for gambling. We have hotlines for people who are addicted to porn and a bunch of other stuff. So again, when you want to try to compare the Bible to what we live now, it's not much different in some ways. That isn't to sit there and say that slavery is good. It's not to say prostitution is good, but at the end of the day, I'm going to make this very quick and very clear. You cannot change a society by just saying something's wrong. There's a process behind that. So, for example, the process in America to help people understand that slavery was wrong and not okay to practice was that we started humanizing people, all people. And the very person who instituted the abolition of slavery was a Christian man named Abraham Lincoln. So, again, if you really want to try to debate me on that, I've had 3 videos entirely dedicated to people having arguments about how the Bible condones slavery, even though every time they bring up a verse, it's either entirely wrong or it is literally God putting regulations so people cannot hurt the people that they have under them. And again, not every form of slavery was the same form of slavery you're thinking of when you think 100, 200 years ago or in Egypt. It was, in most cases, servants, like servitude. People would sell themselves into slavery, right? They would sell themselves into slavery. They would do that. People would sell themselves into slavery. And they did this because they didn't have any other way of making money. So how would this work? They would sell themselves into slavery or indentured servitude, and they would work for the person. They would work for the person. They would live in that person's house, and they would work for that person. And we understand slaves weren't always treated all evilly. Now, it still wasn't the greatest method, but again, we understand it to be similar to a normal job today. Like, for example, later on in the Bible, in Genesis, you see Joseph was a slave, but Joseph eventually became ruler um over his master's property. That's not something you would see a slave do. That's something you would see someone who works for someone else do after they work for them long enough. That's not the actions of a slave that we understand today. That's the actions of someone who's under someone else working for them. So again, I'm not going to sit here and give you an intellectual dialogue because that would literally be like 30 minutes worth, because it is. It's actually almost 2 hours worth because I made multiple videos talking about it. But anyway, moving on. I will explain a little more though. Anyway, he was given sheep, oxen, male donkeys, male servants, female donkeys, and camels because Pharaoh wanted to, he wanted to do good to the person who he thought was not her husband. He thought it was her brother, right? He wanted to do good to her because he was going to try to put her in his harem, because that's what the Pharaoh would have done. The Lord afflicted Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. So even though God did not need to do that, because what Abram should have done was be honest and expect God to protect him, because God told him that he would allow him to become. So again, what he did was because of fear, and because of fear he sinned. Now God got him out of it, and Pharaoh was upset about that, but Pharaoh didn't want God to do anything else to him, so he let them go free without harm and said, no one's going to harm you. Leave them alone. Right? And Pharaoh gave men orders concerning him, and they sent him away with his wife and all that he had. So that means all the slaves, all the sheep, all the oxen, all the donkeys. So God allowed him to do that because, again, God made a covenant with him and a promise with him that he would make him prosperous throughout the land. And he can't do that if he's already dead. So God keeps on his promises. It's us that break it. Anyway, Abraham and Lot separate. Now, there was a point where Abraham and Lot were like, okay, you know what? We're getting too big to be one group. There's people acting up in our groups. They don't like each other, so we need to split up. So Abram said, you know what? You go here. If you go here, I go there. If I go there, you'll go here. Right? So he let Lot pick the most sufficient looking area because he's the older person. He is more mature than Lot, and Lot is a younger person. And, again, he's just being nice because he's the older person. And he's his uncle. So they split up and they go to 2 separate lands. Abram later on has to rescue Lot because of a war that happens from kings. So Abram gets all his fighting men in his tribe, in his group, and they go rescue Lot. Later on, Lot also gets into another conundrum because he's in the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. Anyway, which I love Sodom and Gomorrah because people always ask the question, why doesn't God just get rid of all evil? Sodom and Gomorrah is a perfect example of God getting rid of all evil in a specific area because people were wicked. Anyway, Melchizedek's important, but not extremely important in this whole summarization. God's covenant with Abraham. Again, God is telling Abraham, man, I need you to lock in. I've been telling you this for a hot minute. I'm going to allow you to have children. I'm going to allow you to be prosperous among land. Your children are going to fill the earth like sand. They're going to fill the earth like sand. I need you to just lock in and trust me. So, anyway, he's telling Abraham that, and, as he's telling him this, later on, God, and again, I'm summarizing, so I'm not going to read every single thing. I'm just summarizing based off what I remember, because I literally just read, oh my gosh, I read this like literally a couple weeks ago. And I also have videos where I read it out loud too. Anyway, yeah, again, this is God reiterating the fact that, again, he is going to bless Abram and his offspring to multiply and just own so much, right? He's trying to bless him. He's trying to do something good through him. And he's not just telling Abraham, do this, do this. Like, he's telling Abraham, listen, I'm going to bless you, but I need you to do this, the simple thing I'm telling you to do. Like, God isn't like out for the worst of us. He's out for the greatest of us, right? He's trying to help us. He's not out to hurt us. He's out to help us. And people don't seem to understand that because they don't read the Bible, honestly. That's the main reason they don't understand it. But also because, like, they look up random things that I guess they go online and just look up. I mean, like, and this is like me being serious. This is what they have to do in their free time. Which is the most disingenuous thing ever. Like, five contradictions in the Bible. The most shocking difference is the article is for 50 biblical contradictions, right? Which I'm gonna, let's just look at one of them. The earth does not last forever. In Ecclesiastes 1:4, read that the earth remains forever, a sentiment echoed in Psalm 104, which praises God for laying the foundation of the earth. So from that it should never be moved. I can't even begin to like imagine how someone can just sit down one day and read the Bible and just find this stuff. Like, and again, these people, I guess it simply goes to show that you can read a book and not understand all what you're reading, and then also just not like recall any of it. So, I will take 5 minutes and no more to look at Ecclesiastes 1:4. I know Ecclesiastes is the book that people call depressing because Ecclesiastes talks about how meaningless life is without God in it. Because we just live on this earth to die, and whatever we gain on this earth is going to either disappear or go to somebody else. Meaningless, meaningless, meaningless. Everything is meaningless. This is Ecclesiastes. So, in Ecclesiastes 1:4, let's see what David's son, Solomon, the smartest man to ever exist, is talking about. Meaningless, 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 says the teacher, utterly meaningless. Everything is meaningless. What do people gain from all their labors at which they toil under the sun? Generations come and generations go, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun's... Okay, so this is... Bro, I'm so pissed off of this crap. This isn't a contradiction. This is simply him using it. Oh my gosh, bro. The sun rises and the sun sets and hurry back to where it rises. The wind blows to the south and it turns to the north. Round and round it goes, ever returning on its course. All streams flow into the sea. This is literally him talking about the fact that everything else... Like, this is simply just him saying that in comparison to us, the earth is going to be around for a long, 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 really long time. Like, this is not him literally saying the earth is going to be forever. Like, that's not at all what he's saying. Like, you can't be serious. And then Psalm 104, like, I don't understand how people read the Bible and just don't understand some things that are, like, it's like people have never heard of, like, allegories or, like, metaphors or, what's the third word I'm thinking of? Analogies. Like, again, Solomon is poetic in this, Ecclesiastes, Songs of Solomon, and also Proverbs. So, like, you don't just, I can't explain this, bro. This is ridiculous. Psalm, 104:5, sorry. 104:5. He set the earth on its foundations, it can never be moved. What is contradictory about this? What is okay? He makes wind his messengers, flames of fire his servants, set the earth on its foundation. So I don't know what about this is contradictive. I don't know how you read. Maybe I'm missing something, but I don't know how you read this and think this is contradictory. I mean, the earth is set on an axis and it has not moved. At least not a significant margin. Like, it's still doing what it's supposed to be. It's still rotating around the sun, or I don't know. Sun's rotating. What is it again? That's around the sun, the earth. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I had to think of like a whole nursery rhyme to remember. But yeah, no, I don't know what he sees in contrast. Like, let's look at one more. The number of animals Noah took on the ark. In Genesis 6, God commands Noah to take two of every kind of animal, one a female, on the ark to preserve a species. However, in Genesis 17, the instructions are more specific, stating that Noah should take 7 pairs of clean animals, sleep for a second. I mean, I feel like this is just God being more specific at the end of the day. Like, this isn't a contradiction. This is just, he says it in here. He says it's just him being more specific. It's not a contradiction. Let's look at one more. Two creation stories, two distinct accounts of creation. In Genesis 11, 2-3, it unfolds in structured order the sequence over 6 days, culminating in the creation of humanity, male and female, on the 6th day. However, the narrative is more focused on human formation here. Genesis 24-25, it created from the dust, followed by vegetation families, and finally Eve, a woman. This portrayal is more intimate and anthropocentric. I haven't seen that word before. It looks like he doesn't, like, this guy just doesn't read. I don't know. Does God forgive people? In 2 Kings 24:4, we encounter a stark declaration. The Lord was not willing to forgive, specifically regarding the sins of King Manasseh, who led Judah into idolatry and shed innocent blood. And again, God's willing to forgive people, but it's about the fact, are they willing to, like, again, God is willing to forgive everyone. He makes that very clear. Otherwise, he would not, again, you have to, like, read the Bible and truly read it through. Because when you read it, you'll understand, one, God's nature. You have to understand God's nature, because if you understand God's nature, you won't just sit there and read stuff and think that he's like, for example, if it's in my nature to be honest and nice, if you see me one day really pissed off and throwing crap around, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, that's not in Psalm's nature. There must be something going on. Your first thought is going to be, oh, Psalm was actually evil the whole time. No. Your first thought's going to be, what pissed Psalm off so much that he normally acts entirely different? Someone must have done something. And then you read into it and say, oh, yeah, that's why he did it. And I specifically remember the story. Manasseh was evil. He was an evil guy. He had no reason to do what he was doing. There were a series of kings that were just evil and wicked and did not want to come to God. There was one king who literally had to become animal-like before he acknowledged the fact that God was God. So, in Kings 24:4, we encounter a stark declaration: the Lord was not willing to forgive, specifically regarding the sins of King Manasseh, who led you to idolatry and shed innocent blood. Okay, so you're making the point as to why, like, you're making a point. And the point is that God is willing to forgive you, but that doesn't mean there's consequences. Like, there's consequences. There are consequences. So it's not so much that God is not willing to forgive, it's the fact that God is not going to just let it slide. Like, there were plenty of times where God, like, for example, recently we just read, and again, I'm gonna make this really short because I know I gotta get back to explaining the rest of Genesis because there's a lot. I'm actually probably gonna just make a two-part video. But anyway, finishing up. In Genesis, and let's go to the verse 2 in Kings 24:4. God is willing to forgive people, but even if you forgive someone, that doesn't mean they're just like off the board when it comes to punishment. You're still gonna be punished. So this is Kings 24:4. Let's look at this. Kings, Second Kings? Is it Second Kings? Second Kings 24:4. Okay. Including the shedding of innocent blood, for he had filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, and the Lord was not willing to forgive. So let's read this entirety. Actually, and that's another thing too. Translations are also important, and translations are important because there are word-to-word translations and thought for thought. Word for word means that you're just translating word for word, which doesn't always work because sometimes words don't exist in certain languages that do in this language or a different language, or you're just going to get you're just going to get a message that is, you'll understand it maybe, but you maybe won't. And that's not to sit there and say it's inaccurate. It's it being accurate. That's why it is so weird to read sometimes, because it's it being as accurate as possible, even though it doesn't keep entirely the same message. A thought for thought translation is simply when you're actually translating what they're saying to what they're saying, as opposed to exactly what the words are there to. Let me give you an example. Like in French, let me actually give an example. Translate. Like, again, not every language is the same at all. Like, for example, in comparison to English and Spanish, to an English speaker, when you directly translate what you're saying in Spanish, you'll think, I'm kind of talking backwards, aren't I? So, English to French. Today is a super hot day and I feel hot. So, if I translate this back, maybe it will be exactly like this, but it's high chance it won't. It's very hot today. Yeah, no, not even close. Yeah, not even close. So again, the art of translation is a very specific and serious thing. But anyway, 2 Kings 24:4. During Jehoiakim's reign, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, invaded the land, and Jehoiakim became his vessel for 3 years. But then he turned against Nebuchadnezzar and rebelled. The Lord sent Babylonian, Aramean, Moabite, and Ammonite raiders against him and destroyed Judah, in accordance with the word of the Lord proclaimed by his servants prophets. Truly these things happened to Judah according to the Lord's command, in order to remove them from his presence, because of the sins of Manasseh and all he had done, including the shedding of innocent blood, for he had filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, and the Lord was not willing to forgive. So, in this case, it's not literally talking about forgiving him. Which one? Here's two things. You can't forgive somebody who's not willing to, like, actually admit what they did was wrong. It's very hard to do that. Like, you can't practice that. Like, that's part of the step of forgiving. Like, a lot of people in the Bible repent of their sins. What he didn't repent for that. How do you forgive someone who's not willing to, like, again, so that's why. Like, again, you have to understand people have hardness of heart. People have hardness of heart sometimes. And that means that they are going to sit there and tell you what they did wasn't wrong, even though it was wrong. Very wrong. Right? Now, Abram is an example of someone who repented often for what he did. A lot of figures in the Bible repent of what they do, right? This guy wasn't willing to repent, so you can't forgive someone who's not willing to repent. And even beyond that, if he's not willing to repent, God's not gonna spare him punishment at all. Why would I spare you punishment at all if you're not willing to, like, admit what you did was wrong? Can you forgive somebody if they won't even admit what they did was wrong? I mean, you can mentally say, I'm going to forget about it, but that's, again, forgiving is a two-way process. Anyway, so I'm really curious. I'm actually going to go through all these and, like, generally, because this is ridiculous. This is really funny to me. Levite cities, the prophets Huldah and her family, the Passover celebrations of Hezekiah and Josiah. Who was David's scribe? 3 different answers. The mysterious disappearance of swords in Israel. The mysterious disappearance of swords. This just doesn't seem relevant at all to me. I mean, I get he's trying to find contradictions, but like, what do swords have to do with the authenticity of the Bible? The contradictions in the story of Jacob and Esau, the story of Jacob and Esau is, as told in Genesis 27 and beyond, is a rich narrative full of theological and literary significance. However, as noted in Gable's Bible's literature, it also exists several biblical contradictions, narrative inconsistencies likely due to the blending of multiple sources. One notable inconsistency lies in the method Jacob uses to deceive his father Isaac. The narrative represents two separate strategies. Jacob wears Esau's clothes, which smell of the open country, and covers his arm with goat skins and mimics Esau's hair. While both methods are effective, the what? Okay, so for those of you who don't know, Jacob wore Esau's clothing, and he also put the fur on his arms. Like he put animal fur on his arms because Esau was just freaking hairy. Like that's what the Bible describes. It just describes him as a freaking hairy. Like when he came out, he was red because he had hair on himself. So he was probably the first ever ginger to exist. Funny joke. But anyway, Esau was red when he came out of his mother's womb, and Jacob was right behind him. So they were twins. They were born at the same time. But he was noticeably hairy when he came out, and he was obviously hairy after that, super hairy when he got older. Um, I just don't think this guy like again, I had to like actually talk with this guy because I have no idea what he's talking about. It doesn't seem like the sources were blended. It seems like it makes sense that if we go to that specific, let's honestly, yeah, we're going there. Sarah and Hagar. So we're gonna finish this and then move on. We're gonna jump ahead. But anyway, Sarah and Hagar. Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no children. What did God tell him earlier? I'm going to make you fruitful. So this is again Sarai and Abram not listening to what God told them to do. So what Sarai and Hagar did is that she told her servant, Hagar, you're going to go sleep with my husband. And guess what Abram didn't say? No. Another situation where he was not leading his wife and he let his wife lead him, which he should not have been doing at all. Anyway, he slept with Hagar, he had a baby. Guess who got upset that he actually showed a little bit of favor to her after she had a son? His wife, Sarai, who suggested this in the first place. And now the conundrum is that she wants her gone from the camp. She wants to banish her. She looked with contempt on her mistress. And Sarai said to Abram, may the wrong done to me be on... What? Like, do you know how crazy that is? May the wrong done to me be on you? What? You're the one who suggests the fact that I sleep with her. Like, this is insane. Which he shouldn't have said yes. That's entirely his fault. But this is entirely insane for her. Like, she was crazy. She was crazy. Anyway, may the Lord judge between you and me. But Abram said to Sarai, behold, your servant is in your power. Do to her as you please. This is again Abram being weak. He should have said no because he understands that his wife is not in her right mind right now and she's going to be abusive. Then Sarah dealt harshly with her and she fled from her. So again, Abram was very weak in this situation. Because of that, sin was allowed to happen. He did not have to let that happen. He could have been a man and said, okay, you're the one who orchestrated this. You're going to just sit there and be happy with what you did. Maybe you're not going to be happy. You're going to sit there and think about it. And next time, maybe you won't do this. This is, again, the fault of humans. God didn't tell her to do any of this. God didn't tell them to do any of this. He's sitting there wondering, why don't they just sit there and be patient and wait for me? Anyway, the angel of, and this is God still caring for her, Hagar, knowing what Sarah did. The angel of the Lord found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, the spring on the way to Shur. And he said to Hagar, servant of Sarah, where have you come from? Where are you going? So he sent an angel directly to talk to Hagar. She said, I am fleeing from my mistress Sarai. The angel of the Lord said to her, return to your mistress and submit to her. The angel of the Lord also said to her, I will certainly multiply your offspring so they cannot be numbered or multitude. And the angel of the Lord said to her, behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael. So again, God is still blessing Hagar because he knows Sarah's being stupid. Sarai, because again, Sarah's gonna get mad at the fact that she orchestrated all this and she's gonna get mad at it, which makes no sense at all. Like that's really stupid. Anyway, again, they just should have waited. This would have all been avoided would they have just waited. And a multitude of other things. But anyway, this is literally almost coming up to an hour, so we're gonna make this very short. We're going to go back to what he said in Esau's story, which is gonna be like Genesis 25, 26. No, I skipped so far ahead. Okay, Isaac and Rebecca. Yes. Okay, Abraham took another wife. Anyway, yeah, again, you're gonna read the Bible and you're gonna get a headache. And again, mind you, the Bible's telling history. It's not saying every single thing that happened is something that God condoned on. it's something that God wasn't told someone to write. He inspired him to write it because he wanted them to be truthful. Again, that proves more authentically to the Bible, because the Bible doesn't make everyone else be perfect. They're not. That's part of what God does. He works through people who aren't perfect. All of us, we're not perfect. He works through us, and he does great, amazing things. Anyway, Abraham decided to take on another wife for whatever reason. Like, I don't understand why. God told him that he would make him fruitful if he would just be patient, and he's not doing that. So you'll see things like this in the Bible, and people will say, oh, that's a contradiction. It's not a contradiction. It's someone being impatient and not listening to God. It's someone not doing what God told them to do, and consequences come of that. Anyway, Isaac blesses Jacob. Okay, so when Isaac was old and his eyes were dim so that he could not see, he called Esau his older son and said to him, my son. And he answered, here I am. He said, behold, I am old. I do not know the day of my death. Now then, take your weapons, your hunt, your quiver, and your bow. So I'm going to skip past all this. He's telling him to go get food, to make him food so he can bless him, right? Now Rebekah was listening to when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for game and bring it, Rebekah said to her son Jacob, I heard your father speak to your brother Esau. Bring me game and prepare for me delicious food that I may eat it. And this is the last thing we're going to do before I end the video. That I may eat it and bless you before the Lord before I die. Now therefore, my son, obey my voice as I command you. Go to the flock and bring me 2 good young goats, so that I may prepare for them delicious food to your father, such as he loves. And you shall bring it to your father to eat, so that he may bless you before he dies. But Jacob said to Rebekah his mother, behold, my brother Esau is a hairy man. I am a smooth man, which is crazy to be saying. This is obviously the trans. I'm sure it doesn't actually, like, I'm sure if you could switch to a different translation, he's not going to say smooth. Maybe he will, but anyway. I'm a smooth man. Sounds so weird to say, bro. Perhaps my father will feel me, and I shall see to be mocking him and bring a curse upon myself, not a blessing. So perhaps my father will feel me to see if it's actually the person, because his eyesight's terrible right now, that I claim to be. Let your curse be on me, my son. Only obey my voice and go bring them to me. He could have just simply said no. He didn't have to do this. Again, he did not have to do this. Not everything that happens in the Bible is something God told someone to do. A lot of it isn't what God told him to do. The Bible is the story, and since it's story, it's the history of our relationship with God. And it's very mucky, because God tells us to do something. He tells us he's going to bless us, and we don't listen. So he went and took them and brought them to his mother, and his mother prepared delicious food, such as his wife loved. Then Rebekah took the best garments of Esau, her older son, which were with her in the house, and put them on Jacob, her younger son. And the skins of the young goats she put on his hands and the smooth part of his neck. So I don't see where, I mean, I guess which I highly doubt he did. I so doubt that he looked at actual, again, let me read this. Lies in the methods Jacob used to deceive his father Isaac. The narrative represents 2 separate strategies. Jacob wears Esau's clothes, which smell of the open country, and covers his arms with goatskins. That's not 2 separate accounts or strategies. That's just the same. It's the same strategy. It makes complete. What is this guy talking about, bro? Each may have originally featured. It's the same thing. What are you talking? What is this guy talking about, bro? Like, this is some serious copium. This is like some serious copium. It's very clear that he's putting on the coat so he looks like him. Probably smells like him too, because again, he's a hairy guy and he's out in the wild, so it's so he can smell like him and so he can feel like him. He's fooling the 2 senses that his father has left, his smell and his touch. Now you'll notice that he can't fool his father of his voice, because later on he says, who are you, my son? Jacob said to his father, I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Now sit up and eat of my game, that your soul may bless me. But Isaac said to his son, how is it that you found it so quickly? That's really odd that you came back so quickly. So he's already on, something's wrong here. Then Isaac said to Jacob, please come near that I may feel you, my son, to know whether you really are my son or not. So I'm sure while he felt him, he also smelt him and said, I mean, this guy smells like Esau, but he sounds like Jacob. And he says that the voice is Jacob's voice, but the hands are the hands of Esau. And he did not recognize him because his hands were hair like his brother's Esau's hands. So he blessed him. So again, this is all to fool his father. Like, I don't understand how these contradictions are terrible. Like, it just shows he either looked up contradictions and didn't read them, or he read them and just didn't understand what he was reading. So I pray that whoever listens to this and ever watches this, read your Bible. Seriously, read it. And if you have questions, ask somebody. Ask me. Don't just make up some BS and then expect me to take that. What? It's just disingenuous. You wouldn't do this with any other piece of literature. I want to keep in mind, Alexander the Great has like 10 pieces of, what are they called? What is the word that you would use for this? Manuscripts. He has 10 manuscripts to reference the fact that he existed. And mind you, that was over 600 years ago. Mind you, the manuscripts that say he existed happened hundreds of years after he existed. The Bible, just the New Testament alone, has 2,500 manuscripts. 2,500. 2,500. Just the New Testament. Sorry, 25,000. Oh, my bad. No. Is this 2,500? Is it 25,000? Oh, my fault. I was wrong by a little bit. But anyway, meanwhile, Alexander the Great, who was in Macedonia. Interesting. The Bible even mentions Macedonia. Anyway, Alexander the Great in the Bible. Manuscripts. Alexander the Great. There was no exact number of manuscripts. Let's see. There's a number. Less than 10 manuscripts to prove Genghis Khan existed. The five best surviving accounts of Alexander the Great are Arrian, Plutarch, Diodorus, Siculus, Quintus. Wow, bro. All whom lived hundreds of years after the guy. Wow. Like, wow. All who lived hundreds of years after. It's like, wow, you can't write this. Wow, you can't write this. Anyway, we're done here. I'm gonna have a part two because I kind of got caught up in trying to again be a not evangelist, apologetics. So, I hope this was insightful to you to give you a first like kind of warm up on the first 20 or so chapters of Genesis, plus a couple others ahead of time. But yeah, there will be a part two. Stay blessed, guys. Love you guys and praying for you guys. Amen.